My hands, they're like a roadmap of my life. Every line, every scar, tells a story of sacrifice. Before the cleaning, there were other things. Dreams, maybe. A different kind of life. One where my hands weren't always raw and aching. But life has a funny way of rerouting your plans. Suddenly, there were two little faces looking up at me, depending on me for everything. Cleaning houses wasn't a choice. It was the only path I could see to keep them safe, to keep them fed. It wasn't a career. It was pure, hard survival. It put food on the table, kept a leaky roof over our heads, and gave me just enough pride to meet my boys' eyes every night. Or so I desperately tried to believe. Each morning, I'd pull on those same tired sneakers, the ones with holes I kept trying to ignore, and catch the early bus across town. I'd watch the city wake up, the other passengers heading to offices, to jobs with titles and benefits. Me? I was heading to scrub away the messes of wealthier people, hoping the harsh chemicals would somehow bleach away the gnawing desperation that clung to me like a second skin. The houses, they were like museums, grand rooms filled with expensive things, their walls echoing with stories of a life so far removed from my own, it felt like another planet. The women who lived there, they were always polite, offering me a cup of tea in delicate china before disappearing into their perfectly scheduled days. They'd talk on the phone about vacations and fundraisers, things I could only dream about. The men, they were a different breed. Most of them, they barely registered my presence. I was just part of the furniture, the invisible help. But I noticed them, the lingering scent of their expensive colognes, the way their polished shoes sat neatly by the door, the sheer weight of their presence even when they weren't home. It was a constant reminder of the chasm between our lives. Then there was him. One day, it was so offhand, so casual, I genuinely thought I'd imagined it. I was down on my knees, scrubbing the burnt-on grease from the stovetop, my sponge fighting a losing battle, his voice just cut through the quiet, smooth as whiskey. He was leaning against the kitchen island, holding a glass of red wine. At midday, mind you. His tie was already loosened, like he'd already finished the most important meeting of his day. He looked at me, not with desire, but with this detached calculation. When the meaning finally sank in, my whole body just seized up. Money for sex. He wasn't sleazy about it. No crude gestures or forceful words. Just a statement of fact, like he was discussing stock options or a real estate deal. It was the coldness of it that shocked me, the utter lack of emotion. I turned him down so fast the word no felt like it ripped from my throat. It was automatic, a reflex honed by years of trying to hold on to some semblance of myself. But that no echoed in my head for days after I left his perfectly manicured property. I told myself I'd drawn a line, a thick black line in the sand that nothing could erase. But the days turned into weeks, and his offer, it just wouldn't leave me alone. It was a persistent whisper in the back of my mind. At first, I avoided his house, trading shifts with Maria whenever I could. But life, as it always does, had other plans. The late notices for the rent kept showing up, those menacing red envelopes. And my boys, I could see the worry in their eyes, the way they'd tried to hide their hunger. Their little faces were getting thinner with every meal I couldn't quite afford. I was stretched so thin I felt like I might snap. Then his call came. It wasn't a direct offer, just a casual inquiry about my availability, but the unspoken invitation to return hung heavy in the air. And this time, I picked up the phone. I kept repeating it to myself. I'm just going back to clean, that's all. But as I scrubbed the gleaming chrome of his kitchen sink, I felt his presence even before I saw him. He was just there, standing in the doorway, his gaze steady, assessing, but not overtly threatening. The offer was still there, a tangible thing hanging between us, as real as the scent of lemon cleaner and the soapy water. This time, the no just wouldn't come. My throat felt tight, my voice trapped. When I followed him up those wide, elegant stairs, my legs felt like they were filled with lead. Each step felt like a betrayal, carrying me further and further away from the woman I thought I was. His bedroom was dimly lit, the heavy curtains drawn against the daylight. It smelled faintly of cedar and this spicy, expensive cologne, the kind that seemed to cling to the air long after he'd left the room. The bed was perfectly made, the crisp white linens a stark contrast to the chaotic mess of emotions churning inside me. When he finally touched me, His hands were warm, but utterly impersonal, sliding along my waist like he was testing the weight of an object. There was no tenderness, no connection, just this clinical detachment. My skin prickled under his touch, every nerve ending screaming with discomfort, but also with this other feeling, this shameful acknowledgement of my own desperation. His fingers tightened on the fabric of my blouse, bunching it in his fist as he pulled it roughly over my head. The cool air that hit my bare skin was a sharp, unwelcome reminder of just how exposed and vulnerable I was. I didn't close my eyes. I couldn't. It felt like if I did, I'd disappear completely. Instead, I stared at the room, cataloguing every detail, the soft glow of a bedside lamp, the sleek lines of the expensive furniture that spoke of a life I would never know, a life where this kind of transaction wasn't a means of survival. His hands moved with this practiced confidence, tracing the curve of my back as he drew me closer. I felt the full weight of him against me, the press of his body pinning me to the soft mattress. The bed creaked beneath us, the sound echoing in the silence, louder than it should have been, a stark reminder of the act taking place. His lips moved against my neck, leaving a damp trail that made my stomach churn with nausea. My hands clenched the sheets so tightly, my knuckles were white, every muscle in my body screaming for me to push him away, to stop this. But I didn't. I couldn't. Every movement of his felt calculated, deliberate, like he was just checking off boxes on some mental list. There was no passion, no intimacy, just this cold, methodical act. I hated it. I hated the way my body responded, the unwanted warmth that spread through me despite the revulsion bubbling just beneath my skin. I kept telling myself it was for my boys, that this was the only way, that it was survival. But the lies tasted like ash in my mouth. When it was finally over, he pressed a thick envelope into my hand. The bills inside were crisp, new, and neatly folded. I held it like it might burn me, the weight of it heavier than any amount of paper money should ever feel. I didn't go back right away. I needed time to disappear into myself for a while. The money, it covered a month's rent, filled the fridge with more than just the bare necessities, and let me buy my boys new shoes for the first time in what felt like years. Seeing their faces light up when they tried them on, that was the only thing that made the shame a little less sharp, but it came with a price, a heavy one. I avoided mirrors, afraid of what I might see staring back at me in the dead of night. I scrubbed my skin until it was raw and red, but no amount of soap could ever wash away the memory of his hands, the feeling of his body. Then he called again, and this time, my hand just reached for the phone without thinking. I answered, though I couldn't explain why. He didn't offer more money. He didn't need to. My silence, my hesitation, that was all the agreement he required. And it didn't stop with him. He started introducing me to his friends, business associates, he called them. Their gazes lingered on me in ways that made my stomach twist with a cold dread. The first time with one of them, I thought, maybe, just maybe, I could still say no, but then they pressed that familiar envelope into my hand, and I couldn't bring myself to look them in the eye. As I gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, their hands were rougher, their touches less careful, more entitled. I braced myself for the sting of their grip, the crushing weight of their bodies, pressing me down onto couches, against cold kitchen counters, in sterile hotel beds, each encounter blurring into the next. The smells, they stayed with me long after they were gone, the same expensive cologne, mixed with the sharp metallic tang of sweat and the faint lingering scent of my own regret. I learned to numb myself, to dissociate, to just disappear inside my own head until it was finally over. They didn't speak much, just enough to give directions, to tell me what they wanted. The silence was somehow worse than any crude words. It made me feel like I wasn't a person anymore, just a body, an object to be used and discarded. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that I'd stop as soon as I had enough, as soon as I could see a way out. But the line I thought I'd drawn so firmly in the sand had long since been washed away by the relentless tide of desperation. Some nights, after my boys are finally asleep, their small, innocent breaths filling the quiet apartment, I sit here at this kitchen table and try to balance the scales in my mind. On one side, I see my children's full bellies, their new clothes, the way they no longer whisper longingly about things they want but can't have. On the other side, there's this numbness, this emptiness that spreads a little further with each encounter, making it easier, in a way, to disconnect from the person I've become. I've learned to float above myself during those moments, to watch from somewhere far away as strange men's hands move across my skin. The numbness is almost comfortable now, like an old, unwanted friend who just helps me survive. My younger son hugged me so tight yesterday, his small arms wrapped around my neck, and said I was the best mum in the world. His words were both a blessing and a curse, filling me with a fleeting moment of fierce pride, immediately followed by this crushing wave of self-loathing. The cracks in the ceiling seem to mock me now, a visual representation of all the compromises I've made. A web of choices I can't seem to untangle. But then I look at my sleeping boys, their faces peaceful and trusting in the dim light, and I wonder if maybe the lines we draw in our lives aren't always where we think they should be. Maybe they're just wherever we can still manage to live with ourselves. When morning comes, the sun will rise, and I'll get out of bed, put on those worn sneakers, and catch the bus, and the cycle will begin again.